Guys, welcome to our virtual farm tour here with Craig Corry. I'm Campbell Parish with the Ohio Beef Council. We work here in the state of Ohio with farmers like Craig and from all 88 counties. We were talking earlier about where everyone's from. There are beef farms all over the state. There are 17,000 beef farming families here in Ohio, so I get the pleasure of working with folks like Craig every day. So to start, we want to hear from you guys where you're from. So we're going to go around the room here, and we're going to unmute you and just tell us where you guys are from and what class. So we'll start with Willard High School.
Hi, we're Willard FFA. This is my animal science class as part of our agriculture education department, and we are in Huron County.
Good. We're excited to have you guys here. All right. And our next classroom, Salina High School. Let's say hi to our folks from Salina.
Hi, we are Salina High School. We are located in Mercer County. My name is Michelle Langmeyer, and I am Family Consumer Science class teacher. They are just starting Foods and Nutrition, and our bell just rang, so we'll be back with the new class.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you in a couple minutes. All right, very good. So now on to the star of our show, Mr. Craig Corry. Craig is a beef farmer from Greene County, lives just outside of Xenia, so down in the Dayton area. We're excited to have another tour here on Craig's farm. It's a beautiful fall afternoon, so without further ado, we'll turn it over to Craig. Thanks again for having us.
All right, hello guys, welcome to our farm. By my great-great-great-grandfather, so I'm the 6th generation. My kids are the 7th generation of the Corry family to live and work and operate this farm. The total operation is about 500 acres. We raise corn, soybeans, wheat, hay, and a few acres on the farm are pasture for the cows. We've got about 35 cows in this herd that are the mother cow herd that lives here pretty much all year round. They have a productive life for us. They'll have their first calf when they're about 2 years old, and they'll usually stay here till they're been shown fairs and state fairs, different counties in Ohio, states around the Midwest and the country. So they've been very good to us. It's our job to be good to them. So we have, as I said, a few acres of grass that is pasture, basically because if you can see some of the hills and the rolling soils in the background, conservation.
We're having some connectivity issues. Are you getting that on your end, Campbell? Yeah.
I can hear you guys fine.
Yeah, you're freezing up quite a bit there, Craig. Maybe we might want to move the camera up to a different location where there might be a better signal there.
Okay, Lauren was kind of panning the surrounding area a little bit. How's that?
I think we're still getting about the same type of connection there. We'll try to roll with it. If it goes in and out too much, I would suggest disconnecting and then reconnecting. And Campbell, we might be able to cover some things while they're doing that there.
Okay, we'll try that and see how it goes. As I said, some of the land is in pasture, and we use the cows to harvest the grass that grows and capture that solar energy. The sun shines on the grass grows, the rain falls, and the cows get bigger and grow. So does anybody have any quick questions about the basic operation? Dan, can you hear us all right now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
If you guys have questions on the video, kind of just wave your hand and we can stop and we'll get y'all on the video. If not, if you want to just throw it into the chat, different ways to engage with Craig here.
Okay, Dan, can you kind of summarize that a little bit? I didn't hear Campbell very well.
So Craig, same thing. We're just gonna have them put some questions in the chat or put them on video.
Yeah, if anybody has some questions for Craig there, you can wave your hand. You can go up in front of the video screen there, and we will switch to your classroom, and we'll take some questions right off the bat here before we jump in too much deeper. And I think we have one in Willard.
Hey, it's live.
Hey, I'm Johnny, man. What
Yep,
kind of
I hear
cattle?
you.
What breed cattle do you have?
Okay, these are crossbred for the most part. They are a mixture of breeds, but predominant breeds that we have would be Angus. Of course, that gives them the black hair and the black hide. That's it's an indication that it probably has some Angus in it somewhere. Maine Anjou, Chianina, those would be our main breeds. All right, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what a year in the life of these cows is like. If you look closely, there are no small calves with them now. We have separated the calves from the cow herd, and they are big enough now. They were born in March and April. So in most likelihood, of course, now they can live on their own. They can survive. They can actually gain weight more efficiently eating their own feed that we provide and mix a proper ration for them than they could just getting the cow's milk. That also gives the cows a chance to rest. They've been rebred through the summer at various times, and they'll start calving then again. It's about 9 months from the time a cow is bred to when she calves. So they'll start having their calves again in the late winter, early spring, and we'll give them some special care and even more nutritious feed as they get closer to calving and having to give milk to their calf. So right now, this time of year, we're lucky. You can see in the background, the grass is still green and growing. They are early in their pregnancy, so we will use what's called crop residues, which means some of the corn acres that we raise after the combine harvests the corn. There are corn stalks left in the field, and if the field has a fence around it and some shade and water, we'll let the cows go in, and they will clean up a lot of the corn husks and some of the leaves and get pretty good feed value out of that. As the winter weather starts to set in, we do have to give them more hay. We gave them hay up here today, so maybe they'll stand still. You can look at them really close. Normally, they like to move around a little bit more, but we give them a mouthful or two of feed in the bunks. They'll come up to us, and that's how we gather them for an event such as this. I know one of the questions that came up, we'll touch in a little bit, is some of the meat areas of the animals, and we'll get you fixed up before they start to disappear and wander away. Does anybody have any other questions? I'll move to where we can look closer at one. Okay, Dan is still here, so all right?
Yes, you're okay. Campbell, I believe your microphone is not working at the moment. You might want to look at your audio settings and make sure that's working for you. If anybody has any questions in the classrooms, feel free to come up in front of the camera there, and we'll make sure we capture that. Craig, I think we can continue.
All right, if you guys are in a family consumer science class, you're talking about cuts of meat and beef, then we can say, well, if we'll give a look at a cow a little bit, and once you have your beef charts, it has some nice diagrams and things on there you can see, and a lot of that can be Googled, and you can see the cuts of meat, wholesale and retail and all that. But think about where the muscles are on a cow. Meat is muscle, muscle is meat. So where are the muscle areas on this cow here? It's in her hind leg. This is called the round. This area back here, if you think about how a cow walks, they take a long step. These muscles here are long and finer in texture up across the back. This would be like the loin area here, about the size of like a roast or something like that. You would see out of the loin. This area is called the back, and then it gets into their shoulder. there's not a lot of muscle down in here. When you study nutrition in beef animals, cow has, we had a 3rd grade group the other day, and we told them that a cow has 4 stomachs. Well, they're not actually all 4 stomachs that do the same thing. A cow is a ruminant, which means it has a complex system with 4 compartments. Each of those 4 stomachs, if you will, has a definite function that they perform. But that's what enables these cows to eat hay, to eat grass, and survive and produce meat and milk and products that we need from parts of the earth and areas of the world where humans really can't survive, or a pig could not survive. Other animals would not be able to harvest the grass that grows and get feed out of it. So that might give you a little bit of an idea. I promised I would mention too about, let's say one of the topics that we hear a lot about is quality assurance and beef quality assurance. Cows get sick, and sometimes we have to give them a shot. We have to vaccinate them, just like humans. Most of us, either you guys watching and myself, we've been vaccinated at one time or another, either to treat a disease or prevent a disease. And it's no different with these cows. But what we will do as beef producers is not give them a shot in an area of their body that is a high valued meat cut. So we would try to find an area, and especially most of the vaccines now are subcutaneous, which means it just pulls up a little bit of skin and put the needle in there, and we're not even damaging the muscle or the meat. So if that makes sense, that would make you think, well, then where would we are not having an earthquake. Well, that would make you think, well, where is an area on this cow that we would vaccinate her? So what producers look for is a triangle shaped area here just in front of their shoulder, and it's pretty easy. I can pull her skin up here, and 2 cc's, just a little bit. It doesn't hurt cows. Their hide is leather, they're tough, and all we have to do is have them stand still for a little bit. We can vaccinate her usually once a year, and that will prevent most of the diseases that they might get exposed to during the growing season. So does everybody understand that, or any questions?
Any questions about cows for Craig? So Craig, tell us a little bit about, you've got them bred. When they have a calf, how big will a calf be? Talk to us a little bit about when that time comes around, what that looks like.
Okay. When a calf is born, obviously we would like to have as small a calf as possible, because we would like the mother to be able to have the calf unassisted, even though we will check on them frequently. There are times during the calving season when we will take turns and watch them 24 hours a day in shifts, because we do want to, and it depends a lot on the weather, but we do want to be able there to make sure that the calf is born fine, that it gets milk from its mother as soon as possible, which is called colostrum. The first
Looks like our connection got a little sticky there.
And
there he comes.
Okay.
Seems the connection is going in and out some here. There you are. You're better now. Go ahead.
How's that? Okay. We'd like to have our calves about 70 to 80 pounds when they're born. As soon as they're born, they'll grow very rapidly, take off. Once they get on their own feed, a good calf can gain 2.5 to 3, maybe more than 3 pounds a day.
Very good.
If it's getting the right nutrition, the right feed.
Well, Craig, it looks like we've got a question from Willard High School. Let's take this question, and then maybe we can go over and check out some of the weaned calves.
Okay.
All right, Willard High School.
Okay, So when the cows are out on the pasture, how do you catch them to be able to vaccinate them?
All right. Well, I can get one like this that might stand still for a while, but she might stand if I gave her a shot. But we gather them in an area that's a small area of the pasture and then just open up gates. And if we really have to handle any number of them or vaccinate them, it's rare, number one, we have to do it in the summer. But we have an alleyway, or you might call it a chute. Some people call it chute, as spelled in CHUTE, that is kind of like just think of a couple gates that you could narrow and kind of sandwich them on either side just to get them to stand still, and maybe a collar thing that holds around their neck, because they may not like it a lot, but most of them have been through our system enough. We're gentle with them. They walk, and they kind of get the idea.
Sure.
It's part of their routine. They just don't seem to mind it.
Very cool. Craig, before maybe we head across the lane there, tell us about the guy behind you.
Oh, that guy? Okay. Yeah, you guys can study him close. Kind of, if you think all bulls are mean, he does not have horns. This is one of our bulls. I kind of named him Chumley, but he's a pretty good guy. He's still with the cows, and he's been well behaved. A lot of people think bulls get mean. He is a bull, so there would be times that we would stay out of his way. And there might be times I would call him Mr. Bull, but he has a trick he likes to show off for people. When I scratch his neck right here, he likes to put his head down and move his tongue around. I wouldn't recommend trying to get into a pasture and bother somebody's bull, but since I know Chumley, so far he's been nice to me.
Oh, shoot. That's pretty cool. All right, cool. Well, let's head across the lane here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the wean calves, and I believe Craig's got some feed stuff for us too. So that's, Craig's heard of mama cows, and they're having calves, and the group we're heading to are going to be those mamas' offspring. We're going to see here in just a second. So head over here. Like I said earlier, if you guys got questions, by all means, put them in the chat or come up to the camera like you have before. So.
We gave those guys some feed earlier so that they wouldn't just complain. And if cattle are bawling, chances are they want something. And usually it's something to eat. So this time of year, these are young calves, and we may not be trying to get them to eat a lot of feed. We want to meet their nutritional needs. But as I said a little while ago, cattle have 4 stomachs. And you think about when the nutrition of an animal and different species, how many stomachs does a pig have? How many stomachs do you and I have? A cat or a dog? Well, those animals only have 1. So what limits the maximum amount of feed that one of us one stomach animals can eat in a day? Now, I like to go to Golden Corral and different places. I can eat a lot of feed, but what is ultimately going to restrain how much any of us can eat? It's the size of our stomach. So in the case of a cow or even a young calf, they have 4 stomachs. The first one that all their feed goes through is really big. So they don't know how to limit what they're eating so that they do not overeat and cause some really serious, dangerous health problems for them. So as a producer, when calves are young like this, sometimes it may just be a 5-gallon bucket that we use to hand feed in a bunk so that we can limit the amount that they intake, and we can closely watch. If anything is sick, it's probably not going to eat. So this gives us an idea. These calves are a little off schedule because they're used to being fed in the morning at night. So getting them up and having them move around the day for this activity is going to affect them a little bit, but they'll adjust and it'll be fine. And we got some of the samples of the ingredients that they eat, and we'll let you take a look at some of those.
Craig, so we got a question in the chat. It is from our friends at Salina. So where does veal come from?
Okay, veal. Veal is, this is a beef farm. Veal would be a dairy calf that veal calves are raised from the dairy operations. Veal is basically meat that has not had a solid food. They have been raised on nothing but milk. So they're harvested at a smaller weight, an earlier age, and they are fed veal. If you look at the color of veal meat, it's pasty and light colored, and that's because the solid food that a beef calf eats is what creates different organic enzymes and proteins and things inside these calves, because of their four stomachs are all functioning and working. So veal is fed a milk diet for the most part, and then they're harvested.
Yeah, very good. So the veal industry used to be really, really big. And now that we've learned through new forms of nutrition, we are taking a lot of those dairy calves and they're actually going into a feeding operation. So before, where they were predominantly going to a veal operation, they're actually going to be, beef cattle and get into the beef supply. So that's happened over the past 10 or 12 years. There's, there's less than 1,000 veal farms in the United States at this point.
Yeah, veal is not really, that's not one of the more popular. It's not in wide consumption, maybe as other meat products.
Yep, very good. Well, cool. All right, well, why don't we take a look at what these calves are eating?
All right, most of you guys drive up and down the road. This time of year, you can see a cornfield, and we've just pulled a few ears off. And of course, when the combine goes through, it will take an ear of corn and shell the kernels off, and you get really what's in that pile right there is just shelled corn. Now, cattle will eat it. The cows will eat it. If we need something real quick to give them just a mouthful or two, they will eat it. They can digest it. It's no problem. In most feeding operations, though, we found that if we just crack it a little bit, we have a machine that will do that, grind it just slightly, and process it just enough. It kind of breaks it up into smaller pieces. The cattle can chew it a little bit better and make a little bit better use out of the feed. But that's what shelled corn looks like. We do have, sometimes there are people that will grind the corn and the cob into feed. The cob, when we eat sweet corn, we don't obviously eat the cob. That gets thrown away, but there is feed value, especially a lot of fiber, and it makes the feed bulky, so it's really compatible with their digestive system. So they will get some feed value out of that as well. Also got some raw soybeans here. Cows will eat them. Soybeans are high in protein. Corn, on the other hand, is low in protein but high in energy, carbohydrates, and carbs. Soybeans are relatively low in energy, but they're high in protein. Now again, cows will eat them. Raw soybeans are sort of high in protein, but it is more efficient to take the soybeans and process them so that, as a soybean farmer, you think about what a soybean could get made into. They get a lot of oil out of a soybean by squeezing it and processing it. That makes diesel fuel. It also makes oil for printing and plastics. And then the meal is turned into pellets in a lot of cases like this. So they can take the meal and put a little bit of molasses with it, and it helps it congeal, hold together, and add some vitamins and minerals and other ingredients that the cattle need. Now, when you mix pellets with corn, that's a lot better than if either one of these was ground too fine. think of like the potato chips in a bag. The fines always go to the bottom and it doesn't ever mix very well. So that's why different feedstuffs are put into a form that they hold a little bit of shape. If nothing else, it helps them mix. Okay. This over here, it kind of looks like sand, and all that is that's ground calcium, phosphorus, has some salt, and cows like salt. Salt helps regulate their water. Most people that raise cattle, the cows have access to what we call free choice. They can go get a drink of water anytime they would like. There's always a water available to them. And in our case, we let them have a tub that has some of this salt and mineral mix. If they want some salt, they go lick it. A cow's tongue is really rough and tough. So they just take a couple licks of that, and that's probably all the salt and mineral that they'll want for the entire day. We just let them have it free choice. They get what they want. So what I just fed these calves was a mix of some of these things that we just have here. There's some corn. There are some pellets with the protein in it, the vitamins and minerals. And this other grain that we have looks a little bit like oats. For young calves, that's a good feed. This grain actually is called spelt, but it's not well known by a lot of people. Sort of looks like wheat when it comes out of its shell there, but that is actually called spelt, and it's just about like oats. But the difference between it and oats is we can plant spelt in the fall, let it grow through the winter, harvest it next summer. Oats are going to be planted in the spring and harvested in the summer. Anybody have any questions about the feeding?
All right, guys, if you got questions for Craig, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left. Make sure you come up here to the camera. So we got someone from Willard High School. Let's hear from you.
Okay, how do the feed rations differ between the pregnant cows and the calves?
So how is the feed ration different from these calves versus a pregnant cow? Right?
Yep.
Okay. Cows don't need, they're mature, they're full grown, and especially this time of year, they don't need the amount of carbohydrates or even as high amount of protein as a growing calf does. So we will not give them very much corn. The only reason I gave them corn today was to get them, coax them up, kind of give them like, to them, it's like dessert. It's a reward for coming up to the bunk and coming close to the barn. As I said a little while ago, though, in a pregnant cow, as they get closer to calving, they've got to prepare their body to go through the birthing process. They will need to be able to give milk for the calf, as well as maintain good body condition to prepare to be for rebreeding next spring and summer. So we will put them on a schedule nutritionally to increase their calories a little bit, but probably not until February or so of next year. The exception would be if we would have some really, really cold weather in December or January. If it's really cold, a cow lives outside, how do they keep warm? Well, they can go in the barn and we keep them dry, keep them out of the wind, and it can be colder than any of us would want to be outside. It really won't bother the cows as long as we give them a little bit of extra feed to help them make energy and calories that they will use to keep themselves warm. That's what they will use. These guys over here, they will gradually be increased. We will increase the amount of feed that they get gradually. Kids that take cattle to the fair, when you build them up to what's called full feed, that can be, by the time we get to next summer, these guys could eat almost a 5-gallon bucket of feed themselves each day. But it would be bad to try to give them that much now. They could overeat, and it could be deadly in some cases. So we're going to just give them a little bit more at a time, gradually let them build themselves up. And then once they get on what we call full feed, we never let them run out of feed. And they will adjust themselves as to what they are able to eat on a day-to-day basis.
Great question from Willard. All right, so we got a question in chat from Salina. What is the most popular retail cut of beef?
Okay, think about that. That's a good question as well. The answer, I could almost make that, I can answer that two ways, or I could answer it with a question. What is the most expensive cut that you have to pay for? It's going to be in the steak area, and it's going to come probably from the loin. So if you go through the grocery store and look at the meat counter, look at how much per pound different cuts of meats are. Ground beef, that's cheap stuff. That's ground beef. A lot of that's going to be from the shorter muscle areas, the shoulder, where the muscles, you think on us, our muscles move in this way, where a cow's hind leg, that's a longer, higher quality muscle down their back, their loin area. Those are very high value retail cuts. So the highest price per pound is going to be a cut from the loin. The highest value total cuts would be something like the round or the quarter, because there's more of it and it's still a pretty good price per pound. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. So yeah, like Craig said, the steaks are probably the most popular. In terms of volume, though, ground beef is by far the most sold type of beef product. You know, people in the
Think
United
about
States.
fast food.
Yep.
All fast food restaurants.
Exactly. So we eat a ton of ground beef in the United States, and a lot of lean ground beef. So it's a very good question. Other questions? Willard High School. It's probably your guys' turn if anybody has one.
Anybody? I'll share for the class because no one is brave enough to come up. We are learning a lot about careers within the animal industry, and we're curious to what is the best perk of being a beef producer?
The best perk of being a producer? Well, I've raised cattle most of my life. I grew up, my dad and grandfather they milked, if you take 50 to 60 or 100 years ago, most everybody had a few dairy cows, probably some pigs, maybe some beef cows, maybe even some sheep. But farms, as they've gotten larger and families have progressed, they've specialized more. My family transitioned because we wanted to make better use of the pasture and the farm. So we got out of the hog business and the swine and got into beef cattle. It's been very good to me. It's hard work being a producer. It's not something that comes economically, because land is expensive. If you're going to raise good cattle, the genetics and cattle are expensive themselves to get into the business. But it does put us in cooperation with nature. It's a good feeling to watch a cow giving birth to a new calf, and being able to assist if we have one that has a health problem, and we're able to make it feel better. That's help it become more productive too. That means a lot to us.
Very good. So Salina kind of had a similar question. So you kind of talked about what you did, what made you decide to become a farmer. The other question they had is, how many hours do you have to work a week to take care of your cows?
Well, that becomes a matter of how much do you want to sleep at night, and it certainly depends on how many hours of sleep do you need. Because if I look around the cattle farm, I could work 24 hours a day and not keep up with everything that probably needs to be done. There are times of year when maybe the workload slacks off a little bit. That's one maybe nice thing about a beef herd as opposed to a dairy cow herd. Dairy cow herd, the cows have to be milked 2 or 3 times a day. Even if you're sick, you can't hardly go on vacation. You got to take care of them. The beef cows, we can sneak away for a day or two, as long as they've got grass to eat and everything is good shape. They might not know we're even gone. So it is kind of seasonal a little bit in this area. As far as what made me want to become a farmer, I think that goes back probably till when I was old enough to walk, just spending with my dad and my grandpa. I probably have not ever known another life, although I did work 30 years as a VOAG teacher. So even during that time, when I taught ag ed in high schools here in Greene County, I also operated the family farm. So hours in a work day, to me, that's, you came home from school and we went to work. We went to school the next day and we came home and we went back to work.
Good question. Willard High School, your guys' turn. You guys got another question for us?
Yep, just a second. She's coming.
Sure. Come on up.
How many people do you guys employ?
We have no outside employees. That's all done by family people right here at the farm.
Good question. All right. What is your favorite beef recipe in your family? From Salina High School.
I would probably make it simple, just a nice hamburger or a good steak. We do keep usually about 1.5 of a beef for our family use. And so therefore we have a mix of all the cuts that you guys will be learning about and studying. So we have steaks, we have ground beef, we have soup bones, we have everything. But we have a nice grill, and a good grilled steak is hard to beat.
Very good. Very good. All right. Willard High School, we'll go back to you guys.
Anybody got any other questions? We had a comment on how impressive it was that the farm is strictly family employed. And we're curious to how many calves you normally calve a year.
Oh, well, all right, that's easy. That just really depends on the number of cows. Our goal is for every cow to have 1 calf every year. And that's typical for all the beef cows, the mother cows in Ohio and across the country. A rancher has a cow herd, and occasionally they will have twins. That's a bonus if they're both nice, big, good-doing calves. Once in a while, a cow can have triplets. That's probably not our goal to produce like a litter of pigs. Our goal is to have at least 1 good, robust, healthy calf out of a cow each year. As far as the employment and the family working here, we're probably not atypical of most of the family farm operations in Ohio. We don't have it's 500 acres, and around these parts, that's really not that big a farm. We just are well equipped enough with machinery and have our workload, and we try to produce what we can handle ourselves. So I am now, I guess you could say, a full-time employee, but we have other business ventures that we're involved in as well. Having beef cattle helps with that because, as I say, we can kind of do our morning chores, walk away from them. We don't have to stand here and watch them every day, every hour of every day.
Sure. That's a really good comment, Craig. So Ohio has, like I said earlier, 17,000 beef farms, and the average herd size is only 13. So by the average, Craig has a pretty large farm. He's well above that average. But as you can see, it's a nice small herd, keeps him busy enough. That's what's really, really amazing about the beef industry is you can scale your operation to a size that fits your family's needs and desires. And as things change, you can scale it up and down. So a lot of folks will have a full-time job and then have a beef herd at home where they can take care of them in the morning, come home and work them a little bit, and still be able to raise nice, healthy calves. So we had another question about how do you sell your animals? So let's maybe talk a little bit about what market weight is and how you get them there. And then, it's time to sell them. How does that process work?
All right. Okay. That's a good question as well. Well, as I'd said before, we do sell some calves to young people and families that are going to show them at county fairs or other shows. So at that point, they would buy a calf the size of one of these, and then gradually train it so it can be led with a halter or bridle. If you're thinking in the horse terms, some of you may be familiar with horses having a bit and bridle, but a cow, you can train them to walk with you with a halter, and then take it to a show and show it for its breeding ability, qualities, its meat characteristics, and that's what cattle shows are going to use to evaluate animals as they grow and mature. The rest of them, the vast majority that we produce, they're born in March and April of, let's say, 2017. They'll grow all through the winter. We'll get them built up to full feed. If they gain 2.8 or 3 pounds a day, let's say, they will be reaching market weight of about 1,200, 1,300, some even bigger than that, 1,300, 1,400 pounds next summer, beginning about the time school's out, maybe June, the middle of June. We will use as you can see, the cattle have ear tags, so that helps us keep track of their genetics, which cow they came from, so we can identify those that are superior producers and growers. That way we'll use them to help sort and keep track of as they reach market weight. We can take maybe 5 or 6 a week to stockyards in our area, where buyers from the packing plants and the meat companies will come and competitively bid so that they can own one of our animals and harvest it and process it and sell it for meat.
That's good. All right, Willard High School, we got a question from you guys. We've got about enough time for this question, maybe one more from Salina, and then we've got to wrap up. So go ahead, Willard.
Do you do natural breeding or do any AI breeding?
Okay, you saw Chumley over there. He does the natural breeding, and we do as much artificial insemination as we can because we do have a relatively small herd. It's kind of a quality-based market, so we try to, especially for the show calves. Some of you have heard the term club calves. That has nothing to do with a club. That has to do with 4-H and FFA, which are clubs that kids are in and take cattle to shows. So we will breed some of the cows, so they will try to produce those show type calves. And usually we use artificial insemination. There is technology now to where they can actually transfer embryos in quick terms, call it flushing embryos from a donor cow that's been bred artificially. And then those embryos can be put into what you might think of as surrogate mothers that will carry the calf to term through a full pregnancy and give birth to the calf and treat it as one of its own, even though the genetics are from another donor female and a bull.
Great question. All right, and our last question, can cows be difficult to handle?
I guess they could. We're fortunate that we try to use that as one of our factors as to whether or not, if anything's mean and has a bad attitude to work with, we would rather not have a female like that around. Ours are pretty docile, and they've been, a lot of it just comes with being around them, walking through them. The only time that something can get, we call it being a little bit athletic. If they get excited, loud noises, things like that you don't want to scare them. So we try to be as calm, and we just let them kind of find out where they want to go on their own and funnel them down. If we have to sort one out to give it a shot or something like that, you got to work them into an area where you can hold them still. If you have a bull that weighs a ton, and a lot of them do, and if he gets a stick from walking out in the woods, if he gets a stick that jabs and injures his foot, how you gonna help him? You can't just give up on him and say, well, he's too big and mean. It's our responsibility to take care of him. Flies will bother him sometimes, and they can get pink eye. Some of us, probably you guys watching, have had conjunctivitis. That's commonly known as pink eye, and cattle get it. And if it's not treated, it can ruin their eye, make them go blind in that eye. So we have to treat them, put some lotion in it or something like that. Well, you got to hold their head still to do it. So we have, as I said, a couple gates. We can squeeze them in very gently. Usually there is very little problem. They're always pretty easy to work with.
Very good. Very good. All right, guys. Well, we are running low on time. Craig, how about we pan around the rest of the farm here, and you can kind of see what we are, what the rest of the farm looks like. We've just only had 45 minutes with you, and then we'll sign off.
Okay. All right. I'd mentioned as Lauren pans the camera, you see that big barn in the background. Of course, it's been remodeled in 1830 something when my great grandfather built it. Obviously, we didn't have metal siding, but we're lucky enough that that building, even though it was designed and built many years ago, it still has a useful enough. It's tall enough underneath. We cattle can use the downstairs for shelter in the winter. We store a lot of hay and some machinery upstairs year round, so we're very lucky. And the area up here that we're looking at now, that has that's a concrete floor and with a fence around it, and that's more of our finishing area where the cattle will be next spring through the winter. Next spring, plenty of shelter, and it faces so that our prevailing wind is to the cattle's back. They're always protected, and they're dry when they want to be in the shelter. And we store machinery, and there's some of our machinery there in the background.
Very good. Well, guys, want to take a second to thank you all for coming, and Craig, thank you again for hosting us. Guys,
Sure.
we'll unmute you, and you guys can thank Craig as well. But that's all we have for this afternoon. If you guys have more questions, feel free to reach out to Dan or myself, and we can get you in contact with Craig and get you resources you guys need all about beef. So thank you again. Let's thank Craig.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Football Friday. Let's enjoy it.
Yep.
Absolutely.